A corporal at the McPherson unit in Arkansas was accused of sexual assault. What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some horrific news that just came out of Arkansas. Now, most of you guys know at this point that I have served time in the McPherson unit and Wrightsville unit in Arkansas. Before I get started, I do want to put a trigger warning in here. If this is something that upsets you or bothers you or triggers you, please click off of this video and I will see you in the next one. For everyone else, I would humbly like to ask you to share this video because I don't think these things are talked about enough. Before we get into today's video, hi, my name is Jess. I'm a person in long-term recovery who has served time in prison, and my entire crazy life story is in the description box down below. If you want to follow me on any other social media platform where I talk about all kinds of things like this, TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, which is more like behind the scenes stuff, and it's $2. It's only ever going to be $2. All of that is linked down below, as well as my podcast and my vlog channel and all that other stuff that I have going on. You will also find a link to Groups Recovery, which is something that I am a proud partner with. Groups helps people find treatment both in person and online, and they're just absolutely incredible. All of that is linked down below. So without further ado, let's jump into today's video. A couple of weeks ago, I posted a video talking about a former sergeant that had reached out to me on Facebook and DM'd me, and he has seen the channel. And I was talking about this with him. We're now friends on Facebook, and this officer has such a kind heart, and he's just as disgusted as I am when it comes to things like this happening. And what's so terrible is that the sergeant that DM'd me that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago has such a good heart, and he's not there anymore. And this happens all the time. The good officers, the ones that care and want to make a difference and are just there to make sure the women are safe and to do their job and go home, the ones that are doing it right, they never seem to last. And that kills me. It kills me, but it's completely understandable because prison is such a difficult environment, not just for inmates, but for staff too. Correctional officer fatigue is a real thing. PTSD among inmates and staff is a real thing. This is a very hard environment to be in, regardless of your uniform. Having said that, the actions of corrections officers need to be brought to light. They need to be held accountable. Things like this need to stop happening. And if you're a good corrections officer and you genuinely love the men and women that you work with every day and you want to make a difference, I know how frustrating it is to constantly see these headlines. I know how heartbreaking it is for you. I know how alone it must feel to be a good officer in a sea of sharks. I would see corrections officers get talked shit to by other staff members and ridiculed and put down because they're talking to inmates as if they're people. And before I get into the article on this video, if you think you just shouldn't have broken the law, don't do the time if you can't do the crime, oh, you want a good living conditions, you want to be treated with respect, don't go to prison, what you're doing is you're excusing the behaviors of some very sick individuals, and you're saying that it's okay to abuse inmates because they made a mistake. And I promise you, if you thought like that, your tune would change the second you walk through Sallyport. Sallyport's like the back of the prison that inmates go through. So you would change your attitude the second that you were put in prison. I have seen people's reaction to going to prison for the first time. I've seen it, and they're terrified. No one's tough on that first day in prison. They're not. They're scared, and you should be. It's intimidating. It's intimidating for a reason. It's freaking prison, right? So all the keyboard warriors out there,
shut up, because you'd be just as scared.
I'm gonna read you guys the article. I'm also going to link it down below. Corporal accused of sexual assault at McPherson unit. Arkansas State Police arrested an Arkansas Department of Correction corporal accused of sexual assault in the 3rd degree at McPherson unit in Newport, which is where I was. According to an affidavit, ASP Special Agent Sean Regal stated the investigation surrounded sexual assault in an inmate's cell. An inmate accused Corporal James Franklin Lowe, who's 46 years old, of sexually assaulting her through the food flap of her cell. The special agent reviewed a surveillance video that showed the Tuckerman man approach the cell door and place his arm inside the food flap. The inmate said that's when the sexual assault happened. It remained there for approximately 48 seconds. Corporal Lowe admitted his actions to investigators during an interview. The affidavit also stated the inmate alleged Corporal Lowe often engaged in sexual conversations with this inmate. From the sound of this very brief article, where there's not a lot of details, it sounds like he had been working on doing this for some time. And the problem with that is, if an officer wants to engage in a sexual act with an inmate, they will begin to groom them. They will begin to do little small things where they make sexual comments or advances, or maybe it's just a look. It's the smallest thing. And slowly but surely it stems. And they want to see, is this inmate going to tell? Is this inmate going to let me do this? Is this inmate going to participate? Is this inmate going to be somebody that is too afraid to say anything? Are they too intimidated to come forward? And they feel that situation out for some time. It's not something that happens in an instant. It's something that takes time to happen. All of the while, when things like this are happening, and I've seen it and I've heard it with my own two eyes, is that the women are so uncomfortable and we don't know who to turn to when an officer is being inappropriate. Yes, we can write a kite, which is like a letter. We could tell the warden, we could say something, but there is so much intimidation and fear in prison that if you say anything against an officer, whether it's a grievance or you come forward, a lot of women feel as though they're going to be retaliated against, which is completely unacceptable, but happens all the time. All the time. Officers tend to stick with officers and inmates tend to stick to inmates. You never know what's going to happen if you try to go forward and talk to a staff member about something that's happening. Having said that, it is so important to come forward. It's so important to come forward. I am very proud of the woman that came forward and told authorities. That took courage, it took bravery, and I can't imagine what she's going through. If you are questioning or wondering why she would stand there and allow the officer to do that from she was inside the cell and he was outside of the cell, you have to understand she was probably genuinely afraid to say anything or do anything or act. I've talked to a lot of victims of sexual assault. It's almost as if you're like in an out-of-body experience and you're just shocked. You're just stuck there. You don't know what to do and you're frozen. You can't believe that this is happening. I would imagine, obviously I was not there, that is kind of what was going on. You also have to understand there's a lot of shame and embarrassment for the people that are victims of sexual assault, and there shouldn't be because it is not your fault. What I don't like about this article is that it's so brief. Not only is it so brief, but the title says accused. He was accused of this. Like, no, he admitted to it. In a sworn statement, he admitted to doing this. The video surveillance shows him doing this. So like, it's not just that he was accused and there's no evidence, like there is evidence. So having done time in prison myself, having worked with and talked to inmates since coming home, this is so rampant that I feel like it's never gonna end. I feel like it's never gonna end. And what's even more heartbreaking and sickening is this officer, this corporal, he probably is a first-time offender, never had a charge, and they're going to give him like the tiniest bit of time. I know how the state of Arkansas handles sexual assault cases, and they don't punish you as much as they would punish you if you were a drug dealer. And the reason why I know that is because I have followed many cases out of Arkansas. I've mentioned this almost every time we talk about sexual assault in Arkansas. The chaplain at the McPherson Women's Unit in Arkansas raped 5 women for years. For years he got away with this. And he was like decorated, getting awards, and he got 5 years in prison. That was his sentence, 5 years. Well, you guys know my story. My sentence was 5 years. And he gave a woman herpes. The woman that has come forward and been released from prison was the only person that did not have life, and she was my friend. Do you know why she was in prison? For bringing weed across the border, and she got like 20 years for that. And now she has to spend the rest of her life with this trauma, the rest of her life with that STD. What kills me the whole thing kills me, but she was such a kind, sweet, good-hearted person that would give you the shirt off her back. She is such an incredible, strong woman, and I am heartbroken for her. Every time I think about it, I just can't imagine the horror that she lived in for years. And this is still happening in the McPherson unit in Arkansas. It's still happening. The fact that officers think that they can do this and get away with it is disgusting. Do you not see this guy's mugshot? Like, look at his face. But he does not look remorseful or concerned or worried at all. I'm going to follow this case and see how much time he gets, but I'm not going to be surprised if he gets like probation. And I'm also wondering if more women are going to come forward, because in so many cases, when one woman has the courage and the bravery to come forward, it helps other women come forward and get the courage to tell the world, like, this person did that to me too, men and women. So it's so important that all the details come to light and this person is punished accordingly. But I'm so scared that he's not going to be punished accordingly. I'm so afraid he's just gonna get probation or slap on the wrist or some fine or something. I would just also like to add in here that most of the women that I have served time with at some point in their life have been victims of sexual assault or abuse or trauma in their life. A lot of it sexual trauma. So imagine you go to prison for addiction, which stemmed from trauma in your life at the hands of abusers, and you go to prison for your drug addiction, and you're further victimized and abused at the hands of the staff in that prison. That trauma stays with you forever. That trauma, I just can't even imagine that trauma. I want staff members in prison to be held accountable for their actions, for their negligence, for their abuse, for not getting proper care to inmates. I want them to be afraid for their freedom, not just for their job. I don't know if I'll ever stop seeing this happen, because when we're talking about prison reform, people are so close-minded and just cruel and mean, like just shouldn't have broken the law, and they brush it off, that I feel like we're never gonna make the changes that we need to protect the men and women inside of these facilities. We need to start helping the people that we can that go through those doors, because what happens when we don't is we're releasing traumatized people out into society, and they're not able to reacclimate into society or even be mentally okay, and that creates recidivism. That's the reason people keep going back. I'm sorry this video is so awful today, but I'm so fucking sick and tired of this. I'm so sick and tired of this. I just want to ask you guys again, please share this video, and I will update you guys as soon as I see an update come out of Arkansas. I'm gonna end today's video here. As always, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay in recovery, whatever that looks like to you, because there is no wrong way to recover. And I will see you all in my next one.